Hi everyone. I'm just going to start with some introductions as we set up. So my name is Anisa Jackson, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Social and Cultural Analysis at NYU, and a curator at large at the Aspen Art Museum. But my capacity in this conference is as a graduate researcher for Marking Time. And I just want to start off by saying I'm really happy and energized being here with everyone. It's really great to see people in person for the first time in a long time, or to meet people who I've been talking to over the phone or emailing over the past many months. I've just met so many incredible people from this project and through Nicole, as I'm sure we all have. And one of these people is the incredible artist who I'm very happy and excited to be in conversation with today, Mary Enoch Elizabeth Baxter. Mary is an award-winning Philadelphia-based multidisciplinary artist, educator, and activist who creates socially conscious music, film, and visual art through an autobiographical lens to develop, articulate, and convey intersectional counter-narratives that interrogate the ways in which the historical over-policing and exploitation of Black bodies facilitate, perpetuate, and often legitimize the continued subjugation of Black people in America. Although it has been a decade since her release from a Pennsylvania prison, her time spent on the inside continues to shape the direction of her art and practice. Her work has been exhibited at venues including MoMA PS1, African American Museum of Philadelphia, Eastern State Penitentiary, National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, Ben & Jerry's Factory in Waterbury, Vermont, and Marx's Gallery, among others. Ms. Baxter is also a 2017 SO's Right of Return Fellow, 2018 and 2019 Mural Arts Philadelphia Reimagining Reentry Fellow, 2019 Leeway Foundation Transformation Awardee, 2021 Ed Trust Justice Fellow, 2021 Shea Moisture and Good Mirrors Emerging Visionary Grantee, 2021 Freeze Impact Prize Award winner, 2022 Source Studio Artist in Residence, and a 2022 Art for Justice Grantee Partner. Please, let's give a round of applause. So how we're going to structure the conversation today, Mary will spend a few minutes talking about her work, and then I have a few questions for her, and then we'll open it up for the audience.
And sorry to interrupt, but it said this is going to go to the slides.
All right, well, all right, thank you for that warm introduction, Anisa. Thank you to Nicole, Marking Time, University of Cincinnati, all the collaborators and fellow presenters. It's really an honor to be here today. So first, I'm gonna give a little bit of background of my practice and how it's transformed through the years. I guess I'll start with saying I've always been an artist. I just didn't have the necessary supports, like my parents and my caregivers didn't have access to resources to really nurture and develop those talents. So I guess I'm a slow starter. So at age 30, I decided to attend community college in Philadelphia and obtain a degree in art and design. I finished the program and I had hopes of obtaining my bachelor's in fine arts, and I was accepted to School of Art Institute of Chicago, Moore College of Art and Design, and NYU Tisch for Film and Television, but kind of hit a roadblock because I didn't have a cosigner for a loan. I grew up from age 11 until I emancipated at 17 as a ward of the court. So there really was no family members that, in those circumstances, people would lean on to get assistance to further their education. So I was at a roadblock. I had spent, 3 years getting this degree that was kind of virtually useless. A lot of times, I mean, it was because I really didn't develop my skill set to the point where I could be like a graphic designer and be like a freelance worker. So I wound up going back to community college and pursuing a degree in behavioral health and human services, which before going to school I was involved in a nonprofit area. So it was through that program that I did a practicum, which is essentially an internship at a local community center behind Temple University. I was attached to a housing project. And while there, one of the staff members, Andrea Walls, had told me about a fellowship for formerly incarcerated artists. It was called Right in Return. So I applied, and out of like 500 applicants worldwide, I was one of the first inaugural cohort members. So it kind of did like I had a full circle moment in 2017 where I was able to create this musical film, Ain't I a Woman, which we can go to the first slide, which essentially I had reenacted my incarceration. A lot of you might not know that when I was incarcerated, I was 9 months pregnant. And after 3 days of incarceration in Philadelphia at Riverside Corrections, I went into labor. And during that labor process, I spent 43 hours shackled to a bed. And on the 43rd hour, they decided to do an emergency C-section because I was near death, me and my baby. So fast forward about 10, 11 years later, I get this wonderful fellowship, and I'm able to finally process that moment, really dig in and reflect, and then also connect it with this larger issue in society, this legislation that was being introduced at the federal level, the Dignity for Incarcerated Women Act. So through that advocacy, I was able to utilize this film as a policy organizing tool to not only speak to that issue and connect with other women who, had been through a similar situation, but actually get legislation passed in a number of cities. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania right now, it just passed through a committee. So in addition to, stopping the shackling of women, there were other incentives like having free phone calls to the caregivers of the children while women are incarcerated, so that disconnection is not too exacerbated. Free feminine hygiene products, as well as not having women placed too far away from their children during that experience, so visitation can occur. Because a lot of times, the way that we approach incarceration when women are concerned, especially a caregiver, is that when you incarcerate a woman, you're essentially incarcerating the community. Children of incarcerated parents are 12 times as likely themselves to be incarcerated. So really just interventions in that vicious cycle. So you can go, this is me with marking time, and it's still from the film. You can go on. So also in this triptych, in the third part, it's really advocating for folks that are impacted to be at the leading the charge of criminal justice reform, abolition, and really this concept of shared governance. Not only being at the table, but really calling the shots. And Russell Craig, he was one of the co-founders of Right Return. He and Jesse had approached me about being a part of this project, Portraits of Justice, where they would do my portrait and be included in this mural on a municipal services building in downtown Philadelphia. You can go to the next one. And it was really about young people who were really active in criminal justice reform, just helping to raise our profile and giving the city some incentive to support those efforts. So making us really like larger than life. So this is like one way where, So also in the final part of the triptych, I used the opportunity to film the final part. So we were able to have the mayor, Larry Krasner, which runs the DA office, a very progressive DA, And then also the other right of return folks and folks from the Mural Arts Guild program, just all incorporated. So like, it just extends the life of the art. But if you can go back to the first slide, this is another example of how I'm utilizing art within Ain't I a Woman and extending the life. So this is a billboard I collaborated on with Donna Hilton, who's a writer and an activist for women and girls that are incarcerated, and really just speaking to this like long legacy of unfreedom for Black children and women in the criminal legal system. So you can go down. I'll go through this very quickly. So one of the sites of the film was at Eastern State Penitentiary. I thought it was important because Eastern State's architecture is very critical, I think, to mass incarceration, because it's the first time that the radial design is being introduced, and it enables a small amount of people to monitor a large amount of people, so they can stay in that center and surveil the entire institution. It's been duplicated over 300 times throughout the world. It's, I guess, a technological advancement in oppression. So you can go to the next. Next. Okay, so this is an organization that I helped co-found in Philadelphia, Dignity Act Now Collective, which were a group of women and non-binary and trans people who were like really on the ground advocating for the Dignity for Incarcerated Women Act. And all of these participants are system impacted people. You can go. This is a 10-point platform that we came up with. You can go. This is our co-founders, one of our trainings. Go. One of our first town halls, we're engaging our local legislators next, and also inviting system impacted people for political education. You can go. You can go. You can go. This is when we first introduced it in Harrisburg, the legislation. You can go. This is me with Morgan Cephas, one of our state reps. You can go. This is me. Also, I'm a real strong advocate for higher ed access for impacted people, because we know that this reduces recidivism. So this is me testifying before City Council. I also was in a Ban the Box program, and then further, push that work forward with Ed Trust and developing these resource toolkits for folks on the inside and outside to get access to higher ed after the FAFSA Simplification Act was passed, which pretty much undid the 1994 crime bill, which stopped a lot of funding for higher ed in prison. Go. Okay, go. So this is one of our first events where we had 3 of the MOVE members who were recently released over the last 5 years share some of their tools of how they survived incarceration and came out with like a sound mind. And also some of the community they cultivated with other women on the inside to support their growth and development, like having reading groups and steady exercise, meditation regimens. You can go. Yeah, we was having a lot of fun. This is a press conference, so I'm also a teaching artist. I work at Riverside Corrections, which was the prison that I was incarcerated at when I was pregnant. They've since moved the women out of there and into these trailers because of just growth with the men and juveniles, so they've kind of taken over that facility. But this is a collaboration where I do workshops around the importance of positive affirmations in developing well-being and a power sense of self. And through those workshops, we co-create these affirmations that go into a community collaborative mural that they can engage with every day. Next. That was one of the murals, one of the first ones they did. When the pandemic happened, National Bailout was one of the organizations that the Dignity Act Now Collective had partnered with to help expedite the bailing out of Black mothers in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. Every year, National Bailout does these bailouts for the most marginalized, and they're using this model that Black people developed during slavery, where we raised our own funds to buy our own freedom, and it's pretty much that same mindset. And you can go. So this is during the pandemic. We're doing care packages, supplying like computers and tablets so folks can stay digitally connected, getting them stipends. And then also doing the political education as well. You can go next. All right, so, all right, we can go. So this was Affirmations of Love. It's actually, I think this is my second mural, but this is a mural that I developed during the uprisings. I was thinking about the, just the mental health of Black people and our allies, and just seeing these live murders, and just wanted to really affirm this communal love and support for folks that were on the front lines. You can go. This is another project around that. You can go. Where I'm basically, I'm talking about the pandemic, being, COVID-19 being a pandemic, but systemic racism and white toxicity also being a parallel pandemic that we've been bombarded with for a long time. So you can go, and then it was also a film at one of the protests. We really wanted to center Breonna Taylor and this young child that was gunned down in Philly, and then a trans person that was murdered. Like, this was like all in the same month. All right, you can go. And then, it was happening in West Philly, and then even the neighbors, they came out and they just, supported, joined us, and on the chants, created signs like from their house. You can go. It's like a culmination. So this is another mural I worked on with AT&T. I'm not really a fan of AT&T, but it was an opportunity to use their platform. This was reimagining Black Power. Just another, visual marker, not only for Black people to keep up the tenacity and the energy, but also our collaborators. You can go. So, all this is happening, and during the same time, there's this revelation around, Penn Museum finally repatriating the Morton collection, which was amassed by a doctor who believed in scientific racism. It was the skulls of enslaved Cubans, enslaved Black Philadelphians, and Black Philadelphians, and indigenous people. So they were repatriating the skulls, and that same night, one of the curators contacted a prominent activist in Philly, and said that there was an open secret that they had been holding the moved children's bones. And they had them for over 30 years, and they were using them as a teaching device in a course called Adventures in Anthropology. And they were going back and forth between UPenn and Princeton. So that came out. They, apologized, but it was a public apology. It really wasn't authentic and, made directly to the family. It was a lot of PR going on. And at that time, I was working at Mural Arts, because I'm also, I'm an artist, but I really don't sell much works. So I'm trying to find a way of sustaining my practice. So I approached Mural Arts, since they had been a collaborator for a number of years, about a position. So I was an office manager and assistant to the COO. And I spent a lot of time during the pandemic. I went back to work July of 2020. So I spent a lot of time at Mural Arts' office and in the building by myself. I was the person that would accept packages and answer phone calls. 90% of the staff worked from home. So while this is going on, I'm at work and I'm reading these articles, I'm watching these videos, and I remember the members. So this is a photograph of the 5 children. One of them is cut off. That were killed during the 1985 MOVE bombing, which was facilitated by the police in Philadelphia. So while this is going on, the families had their own press conference. I'm watching that at work, and just something in me, just, I don't know what it was, told me to just do more research on the building that I was in, where I was working, the space. And when I did that, I found out a number of disturbing things. Philadelphia's most famous artist is the building that Merrill Arts is housed in. His name is Thomas Eakins. And it was also his home studio. So during that day, I found an article by Sadia Hartman, A Named Speculative Girl. And basically, it highlighted the fact that he had taken maybe some of the first instances of pornographic photos of children. So this is like maybe one of the first. So trigger warning, it's about to get crazy. So this is on the right, there's a photo of the unnamed African American girl. And so immediately I began to think about how, these elite institutions are exploiting the bodies of Black people in the name of arts and science. That's the correlation I'm putting together. So you can go to the next slide. So this is a photo of the Atlas, which is likened to a prostitute, and this is the pose that the little girl, I cut it off, for obvious reasons, is posed in on his couch, which was like upstairs in the building that I'm working in. So go to the next slide. So this is one of the interventions I made. There were two photos. One was front-facing, one was rear-facing, where I am embracing the child and combating that predatory gaze. I'm also just applying like some critical care and redress. Because, so also what's going on, when I'm finding out this information, I go on the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts website, which was the America's first fine arts school, museum, and also the place where this artist has tenure. And I find that these photographs are available for download. So this is how I'm creating these photos, because these photos are still being, showcased with no context, and her body is still being exploited. So this is the front facing, where I've again, put in my presence and I'm covering her body. And immediately I started thinking about adultification bias, which is a study that they did that showed that Black girls as young as 5 are thought to know more about sex, more criminalized, need less protection, nurturing than their white counterparts. So, and often is a root cause, sexual abuse for depression, drug use, and is criminalized. So I'm making those connections there, and even with an earlier experience with the police when I was 11, which pretty much was one of the reasons that I entered the system as a ward of the court, where I was with an adult in a stolen car, and the car crashed, and I woke up handcuffed to a bed because they said they thought I was an adult, and this is at 11 years old. So I'm also thinking about that when I'm making this work, and I chose to use the daguerreotype cases because I'm thinking about the photo processes that existed during that time period, which were daguerreotypes, tintypes, which are photos on metal, ambrotypes, photos on glass. But I'm thinking about the process in creating those photos, which is very toxic and dangerous. Like, you have to know a lot of chemistry and math. And that's a metaphor for his approach in his photography. I felt that it was very dangerous and toxic, and it has really real impacts on the ways in which Black girls are continuing to be viewed in the contemporary. You've seen the book Push Out, and I mean, that speaks a lot to that. I'm also thinking about children who have been sexually violated as a child. I want to note that in 1882, when these photos were taken, the age of consent was 10 years old for sex. So we really don't know what happened inside of this house. But I'm thinking about, children usually don't have the language to really express what has happened. So the ability to open up up when they can, but when it's too much to shut down and close. So that's why I kept them in the box and also intimately scaled. We can go to the next slide. So this is, okay, we'll wrap it up. So this is like me taking the advocacy to the next level where I'm writing an op-ed because, I approached the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art, told them they needed to make a public statement, apology, and they didn't. They just kind of said, well, we want to buy the work. And I wasn't interested in that. So I did the op-ed. Next slide. The day after I did the op-ed, Mural Arts made a statement because also on all our business cards and staff, it says Eakin's house. This is how they refer to the building. So they said they would cease all, veneration of this particular gentleman. And then go back. But then the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art went and took my artist statement, co-opted, never asked for my endorsement. They never formally apologized for, this dissemination of sexually explicit photographs of children, and it just was, from there, a progression of institutional failures. So next slide. This is when I started a campaign where there was a petition where I'm calling on them to do all the things I just mentioned, as well as make a significant investment in the arts and cultural development of Black girls in Philadelphia, but that would be in complete control of the undersigned, so they wouldn't be administering or making any main decisions. Next. Then they went and had a whole event based on my op-ed, based on my artwork without me. Didn't invite me. So the violence just keeps coming. And then at that point, the art newspaper picks up the story. We have global coverage. And the next slide. So I've continued their work. This is another one of the billboards I did with For Freedoms, where I'm talking, it's just a simple statement, protect Black girls, but I'm also speaking to, adultification bias again. And then the last one is, this is in Florida, where a 6-year-old was arrested in class for throwing a tantrum. So just raising awareness that these issues are continuing in the contemporary in all these different ways, but also trying to draw these correlations to the past. Children as young as 2 working in the fields during slavery, being punished for childlike, age-appropriate behaviors. Just Black children not allowed to be children. Just, so that's it.
Yeah, so I was hoping that we could begin by talking about your newer work, Consecration to Mary. And I have just been really struck by this work. I first learned about Thomas Eakins and those photographs through the various academics who have written about those images. And even I think in the context of writing about the violence of those images, I'm just really just impressed and challenged by the ways that your work builds alternatives to the exploitation of these young girls beyond just naming the violence. Like there's you're creating another redemptive path. And so I guess I was just wondering if you could speak a bit about your process as an artist researcher and how you came to rework these images in the way that you have.
Well, I guess as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, when I first saw the image, I just really connected with it deeply, just on a human level. And then also as a mother, having a child and, knowing that I'm charged with protecting that child and not wanting them to go through what I went through. So it was just very crucial for me to reimagine those moments safe and protected as they should have been. And I think one of the things that propelled me was initially, like when I first found the photograph, I had sent it to someone who was, working at the job, someone that had some power, and they didn't even respond. They didn't even say anything. So I was like, I sat with the photographs for about, this is like the last week of April of 2021, last year. And I just remember just sitting with them the month of May and the month of June, and really just trying to figure out how I could not re-traumatize anyone with the images. And then also just not let this be the last photograph. For me, I felt like the child was trapped and not wanting her to be remembered that way. So that was a real motivator in my process. And just utilizing also technology. We have Photoshop now, so we can do a lot of amazing things with it. And then also trying to look at the work through the lens of Afrofuturism, because I am time traveling to get to her, and a role that could play. That's a lot of the things that I was thinking.
Thank you. So I first saw this work at Marta's Gallery as part of the collective show last fall. And one difference from its presentation there and its presentation as part of Marking Time at the Freedom Center is that many of the frames are closed. So I was wondering if you could talk a bit about
Sure. Also through just looking at other artists and how they were utilizing the bodies of young girls, I came with this epiphany that I really couldn't show the full work if I'm not present, because there's no context. I need to be there. I don't want people to think what they think, So that was, even though people have their own biases and thoughts and perspectives, they're bringing that to the work. But I felt the need to be present. So that's why they're being shown different.
Thank you. I think we have about 2 more minutes, so let's open up questions in the audience. Xavier has a microphone. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
I'm going to stand because I want to thank you, young queen.
Thank you.
Calling that light, for being that light. I've been home 22 years, and I've come where I am through using my learning experience within the incarceration system and building myself up to where I am. And I think that we have to use our experiences to make, and I think that is our obligation, to make it easier for others so that they won't have to go through that. What I learned about, and since I've been here just listening, I think America is a form of mass incarceration. And we've given into, a lot of us have given into the thought system. Her name is Jan Phillips. She did this book called Divining the Body, and in the chapter on hands, she makes a comment and says that we are soldiers on the battlefield of thought. And it's all about changing our mindsets. But I think that's what art does. Art brings it to the forefront. Let us look at it, so we can start changing our viewpoint. And I thank everyone here for being here And we must continue this fight. It's the only way it's going to change. We have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to just ask, it's so many things along the slides that you cover, that you're passionate about, that you do in a space of bravery and openness and deep to me. And so what my question is that with all those spaces of oppression and the vast issues, there's some kind of way interwoven this thing and brought to light in so many different spaces. How do you do that? It's like you went from one medium, if you would, to another, but with our everyday life issues that we're challenged with in the United States from the start to where you took us anyway.
Right. Thanks for the question. So, Ain't I a Woman, which is a musical hip-hop film, I'm using the medium of poetry, hip-hop, performance, and filming. I don't think a song could have adequately given what the photographs, the reimagining of the photographs gave us. So I usually just listen to the art, and that pretty much, it dictates its own medium, and I just allow it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I wish I had more time.
And everyone check out Ain't I a Woman and Consecration to Mary at the Freedom Center alongside the rest of Marketing.
Thanks.